secrets, lies, and shattered promises, sometimes a single night can unravel a lifetime of loyalty. In a world where betrayal comes wrapped in expensive suits and sparkling jewelry, the thinnest thread of fate can twist into the harshest karmic lesson. This is the story of a millionaire husband who thought he had it all under his control. A devoted wife at home, a beautiful mistress by his side, and wealth that opened every door. But as he tried to juggle, his double-life destiny intervened. One fateful evening, his perfect facade collided with reality, and he would regret it for the rest of his days. Alexander Harrington was a man of impeccable taste and boundless wealth. At 39, he had already built a sprawling real estate empire that stretched across continents. His name graced the covers of business magazines, and society columnists praised him for his charitable contributions to the Harrington Children's Foundation. The city's elite admired him, the media idolized him, and countless women fantasized about becoming the next Mrs. Harrington. Behind the polished sheen of his public image, though, lay the gritty truth of a man who thrived on secrets. At the heart of his success lay a restless ambition. Nothing was ever enough, no deal too small, no trophy too big. When Alexander wasn't closing corporate acquisitions in Hong Kong, hobnobbing with the British aristocracy at black-tie galas, or negotiating high-stakes property ventures in Dubai, he indulged in the dark thrill of extramarital affairs. His first wife, Mia Harrington, once believed that their love was unbreakable. They had married in their early 20s, fresh out of college, with little more than shared dreams and a sense of adventure. Over time, as Alexander's fortune grew, the simplicity and honesty that once defined their relationship began to erode, replaced by luxurious hotels, private jets, and for him, intoxicating new women. Lately, though, one particular mistress, Eva Monroe, had become a constant in Alexander's hidden life. She was a rising star in the fashion industry, tall, with piercing grey eyes that demanded attention on any runway. Eva was everything that appealed to his vanity, sophisticated, daring, and fiercely independent, yet he could buy her a diamond necklace in a heartbeat, and she'd wear it proudly on her Instagram feed. Their relationship fueled his ego, giving him the sense of danger and conquest he craved. But what Alexander failed to realize was that the tangled web he wove would soon tighten around him, spelling disaster for his marriage reputation and the illusions he clung to. That day, he had planned something special for Eva. A new luxury restaurant, Mistress Garden, had just opened on the top floor of the Redwood Hotel, an architectural masterpiece that overlooked the city skyline. He spared no expense, reserving the most exclusive table, ensuring a private ambiance, complete with a personal sommelier and a live violinist. It would be an evening of extravagance, a new memory to keep Eva enthralled by his side. Yet, as the final reservations were confirmed, and he pressed end call on his gold-encrusted smartphone, a subtle disquiet gnawed at the back of his mind. He reminded himself he was always the one in control. What could possibly go wrong? Meanwhile, Mia Harrington sat in the quiet living room of the Harrington mansion, reading a novel she'd been too distracted to enjoy. She glanced at the antique clock on the marble fireplace, noting it was already 7 in the evening. Alexander had not called nor texted. She wondered where he was, who he might be with. A pang of regret and frustration surged through her chest. How had life come to this? Years ago, Mia had graduated from an Ivy League university with a degree in art history. She was brilliant, once recognized for her keen insights into Renaissance paintings and her fluency in 4 languages. Initially, she aimed to become a curator at a world-famous museum, or an art advisor to wealthy collectors. Her dreams shifted, though, when Alexander's real estate ventures exploded into success, catapulting them both to new heights of wealth. She had followed him to glittering galas in New York, art auctions in London, and philanthropic events in Paris. Yet as her husband's empire grew, Mia found her own identity shrinking behind the imposing shadow of Mrs. Harrington. She tried to reassert herself with philanthropic work, actively supporting the Harrington Children's Foundation, even establishing the Mia Harrington Art Scholarship for underprivileged youths. But her busy schedule and her heart revolved around Alexander, who seemed to show up less and less in their sprawling house. He was in business meetings abroad, traveling to exotic locales with an entourage that she feared might include more than just lawyers and personal assistants. Some nights she cried herself to sleep, burying her face in the crisp Egyptian cotton pillows. Other nights she steeled herself, determined to play the role of a perfect wife, one that would never cause a scandal or rock the boat. But suspicion is a stubborn guest once it moves into your mind. She had glimpsed rumors in tabloids, overheard whispers at social gatherings, and even spotted small clues on Alexander's phone, suspicious text messages from unknown numbers at odd hours. Mia confronted him several times, but he'd always brush it off with a well-practiced lie or an expensive gift that momentarily numbed her sense of betrayal. That evening, as she watched the shadows stretch across their palatial living room, a single thought reverberated in her mind. She deserved the truth, no matter how painful. And so she rose, slipped a pastel shawl over her shoulders, and decided to step out of her comfort zone. She had recently hired a private investigator, a discreet older gentleman named James Salerno, recommended by a friend who had faced similar marital woes. James's last report had been inconclusive, but Mia felt he was onto something. Tonight, she would follow her instincts. She wanted answers, real answers. Eva Monroe was used to dressing in luxury, but tonight she took extra care. She wore a sleek black gown with a plunging neckline that highlighted her sculpted collarbones. A fiery red lipstick completed the look. She admired herself in the mirror of her penthouse suite, courtesy of Alexander's endless generosity. On her wrist gleamed a diamond bracelet, a small token Alexander had said after closing a $20 million real estate deal. Eva gazed out of her window, overlooking the city skyline. She did not love Alexander in the conventional sense. She loved the power he exuded and the opulence he lavished on her. Yet every so often, a flicker of guilt crept in. She knew he was married, that there was a wife at home, likely oblivious to their secret rendezvous. But those pangs of guilt had a way of fading whenever she stepped into an Aston Martin or wore a piece of jewelry worth more than most people's annual salaries. She reminded herself that ambition had a price. Eva had risen from a humble background. Her father was an auto mechanic in a small Midwestern town, and her mother worked double shifts as a hospital receptionist. She grew up wearing thrift store clothing and yearned for the glamorous life she saw in fashion magazines. Determined to break free from that life, she used her striking beauty and unflinching self-confidence to land modeling jobs. Slowly, she climbed the ranks until she was strutting down runways in New York and Milan. But it wasn't just about money for Eva. It was the sense of belonging in exclusive circles that thrilled her. When Alexander walked into her life, he seemed like the perfect stepping stone. Their fling began with harmless flirting at a private gala in Milan, but soon escalated to secret dinners at five-star restaurants and clandestine weekends in luxury resorts. Tonight she felt a surge of excitement. Whatever Alexander had planned, it would be grand. She was certain of it. Mistress garden, perched on the 45th floor of the Redwood Hotel, was the epitome of modern elegance. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city's glittering lights. The decor combined minimalist lines with lush greenery. High arches formed hidden alcoves, ensuring privacy for those who could afford it. A string quartet played at the far end, their melodies softly drifting among the tables. Alexander arrived first, wanting to ensure every detail was perfect. He wore a tailored Armani suit in midnight blue, accompanied by a sleek silver watch that cost more than some people's cars. The maitre d', a tall Frenchman named Pierre Dubois, greeted him with the deference reserved for VIPs. Alexander noticed the discreet glances from other patrons and employees. It inflated his ego to walk through a place with the aura of a man who owned the world. "Right this way," Monsieur Harrington Pierre said, guiding him past a shimmering water feature and into a corner table with an expansive view. The special touches Alexander had requested a private violinist ready to serenade them. Once dinner began, a chilled bottle of 1999 Dom Perignon were neatly arranged. He smiled, pleased that his instructions had been followed precisely. Eva arrived shortly after, turning heads in her black gown. She moved with the grace of a seasoned runway model, and a hush fell over the area as she joined Alexander at the table. They exchanged a quick kiss on the cheek. Public displays of affection had to be subtle. Even though Mistral's garden boasted a strict code of confidentiality, Alexander knew he had to remain cautious. Gossip traveled fast among the city's elite, and the last thing he wanted was tabloids printing rumors before he could manage the story. They settled into conversation as the sommelier poured champagne into their crystal flutes. The violinist began a soft tune, weaving romance into the air. Alexander reached across the table, lightly brushing Eva's fingers with his own. He felt a momentary twinge of guilt. An image of Mia flashed in his mind, but he quickly buried it. He was here to indulge, to enjoy a night free from the constraints of his marital obligations. They ordered the chef's tasting menu, complete with an extravagant parade of courses: caviar with crème fraîche, truffle-infused linguine, and seared scallops served on a bed of saffron risotto. With each new plate, they toasted to something more lavish. A high-profile property Alexander had just sold in Shanghai, the upcoming fashion show Eva planned to walk in Paris, and their mutual thirst for success. Neither of them noticed the subtle entrance of two other figures, Mia Harrington and her private investigator James Salerno, who had quietly taken seats at a distant table. When Mia stepped out of the taxi in front of the Redwood Hotel, her heart pounded. She wore a simple yet elegant dress in navy blue, not nearly as flashy as the attire of many of the women around her, but it suited her style. At her side walked James Salerno, a composed man in his 60s with kind eyes that belied a razor-sharp intellect. Mia had explained to James that she felt tonight would be the night she might catch Alexander in the act. She asked him to come for moral support, and also because he knew how to observe without drawing attention. They made their way to the elevator, hardly speaking. Mia's mind whirled with possibilities. Maybe Alexander really was stuck at work. Maybe he was traveling. Or maybe her stomach churned at the thought he was indeed with Eva Monroe, the woman rumored to be his latest mistress. At the 45th floor, the elevator doors opened, revealing the glamorous world of Mistral's garden. Mia felt a pang of nostalgia. Alexander used to surprise her with elaborate dinners, whisking her off to rooftop restaurants just like this one. She recalled their honeymoon in Santorini, candlelit dinners overlooking the Aegean Sea, and the unspoken promise that their love would conquer all. Now, the only reason she was here was to uncover the betrayal she had dreaded for years. Quietly, Mia and James made their way to a small table in the corner, near enough to observe the main dining area without attracting attention. James ordered a drink, scanning the room, with the practiced gaze of a detective who had tailed countless cheating spouses. Mia, clutching her purse, felt a cold sweat on her brow. She prayed in some corner of her heart that she would not see Alexander, that this was a wild goose chase fueled by her own paranoia. But there he was. She recognized him instantly. His posture, his gesture as he raised a crystal flute to his lips, every detail was unmistakably Alexander. What tore at her soul was the sight of the glamorous woman seated with him. They leaned toward each other, brimming with intimacy and shared laughter. The violinist played in the background, framing them like the portrait of a perfect couple in love. Mia's breath caught in her throat, and she clenched her fists. If James had any doubt about the man's identity or the nature of his company, the way Alexander gently caressed the woman's hand provided grim confirmation. With a trembling hand, Mia reached for the menu, hoping to hide her face. But she needn't have worried. Alexander, enthralled by Eva's presence, paid no attention to the rest of the restaurant. James, sensing Mia's distress, placed a comforting hand on her arm. "We should collect some evidence," he whispered. "A photo perhaps would help should you decide to confront him, or if legal proceedings become necessary." The mention of divorce or any legal step made Mia's stomach lurch. Yet she nodded. She had come this far. She needed something tangible, something to extinguish the self-doubt that had consumed her. She gave James a silent signal. As discreetly as possible, he angled his phone just so and captured a short video of Alexander and Eva's tender exchanges. After securing the footage, Mia pressed her palms together, thinking of how to confront her husband if she confronted him at all. Her mind flashed to the humiliating reality that if she made a public scene, she might become tabloid fodder. Alexander's name carried clout. She imagined hateful headlines portraying her as the scorned, bitter wife, or plastering pictures of her heartbreak all over the internet. She also thought of the philanthropic events they co-chaired, of the society ladies who would whisper behind her back. The thought of such betrayal laid bare weighed heavily on her. But how could she let this continue in silence? How could she face herself in the mirror tomorrow if she didn't say or do something? Her life had become a nightmare of suspicion and loneliness. Here, finally, was the proof. The ache in her chest turned into a burning sense of injustice, a righteous anger that demanded release. James, ever the professional, remained calm. "We can leave now, Mrs. Harrington," he suggested gently. "You have your evidence. We can strategize a better time and place." But Mia shook her head. Something snapped inside her, something that refused to let her walk away silently yet again. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to face him." Unbeknownst to Mia, her decision to confront Alexander that night would set off a chain reaction of events neither she nor Alexander could have predicted. Just as she mustered the courage to stand, James placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "If you're going to do this, I'll be with you every step of the way." She nodded, grateful for his support, even though she felt small and vulnerable. Meanwhile, across the restaurant, Eva Monroe excused herself to go to the ladies' room, leaving Alexander momentarily alone at the table. He sipped his champagne, reflecting on the string of extravagant dates he had indulged in with Eva. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine Mia would walk through those doors. He assumed she would be at home, likely immersed in a book, or finalizing plans for the next Children's Foundation fundraiser. That's when Mia approached. Her steps were unsteady, but her eyes burned with equal parts heartbreak and resolve. Alexander saw her before she spoke, his entire body tensing. He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his glass. The color drained from his face in a flash of panic. Mia stood there, breathing heavily, searching his gaze. For the first time in years, Alexander's carefully composed mask of confidence shattered. The moment felt suspended in time, the quiet hum of the violin intensifying the tension. Around them, a few other patrons glanced curiously, but Mistral's garden staff were experts at detecting conflict before it flared. Pierre Dubois, the maitre d', hovered in the periphery, ready to diffuse a potential confrontation. James remained a few steps behind Mia, camera phone, discreetly ready in case Alexander tried to deny the reality of the situation. When Mia finally spoke, her voice sounded fragile. Alexander, her eyes welled with tears, but she forced herself to continue. How could you? Alexander's mind raced. He glanced at James, at the phone in his hand, at Mia's tearful yet unwavering eyes. He realized in that instant that nothing he said could undo the betrayal she had witnessed. Yet, in a reflex born of years of evasion, he tried to compose himself. "This isn't what it looks like," he murmured weakly, stepping forward, trying to guide Mia away from the table. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "It's never what it looks like, is it?" she responded, voice cracking. "But this time I have proof." She gestured to James, who held up the phone, capturing the brief footage. Alexander's jaw clenched. He wanted to lash out, to deny, to run anything, but stand there in front of the entire restaurant, admitting the truth. The illusions he cherished wavered like a mirage in the desert air. However, words failed him. No carefully constructed excuse could hold weight anymore. At that precise moment, Eva reappeared, stepping out of the hallway leading from the restrooms. She paused mid-stride, taking in the scene. Mia Harrington, her paramour's wife, face to face with Alexander. There was no easy escape route. The tension emanated from them like heat waves, and Eva felt trapped. In her illusions, she had hoped never to meet Mia. Though guilt nagged her, she believed they could continue their affair as a separate reality, shielded from the heartbreak it inevitably caused. Alexander's eyes flicked toward Eva, silently willing her to leave. But Eva, paralyzed by a mix of surprise and defiance, stayed rooted. Mia's gaze snapped toward her. For a moment, time compressed, as two women who had only known of each other by rumor or fleeting suspicion now stood face to face. The restaurant's ambiance suddenly felt stifling. Patrons could sense the dramatic undercurrents, though the staff tried to maintain an air of calm normalcy. A busboy discreetly collected empty glasses from nearby tables, shooting nervous glances at the confrontation unfolding. The violinist, unsure whether to continue, let the bow rest softly on the strings. Mia's voice steadied. "So you're Eva Monroe," she said, her tone flat, though her eyes brimmed with raw emotion. Eva said nothing, swallowing the lump in her throat. She finally managed a faint nod, her face reddening. She felt no triumph, only the sharp stab of humiliation that comes when fantasies collide violently with reality. Alexander swallowed hard. He took a step toward Mia, raising a hand in a placating gesture. "Mia, let's talk about this somewhere else. Please." She shook her head. "You had endless chances to talk, Alexander, and you never told me the truth. Now here we are." She refused to budge. Her nails dug into her palms as she tried to steady herself. She felt tears threatening to spill, but she also felt a growing sense of power. For the first time, she was no longer cowering in the dark recesses of doubt. She was bringing his deception into the light. A hush descended over Mistral's garden. While most guests maintained a polite distance, word of a potential high society scandal at the corner table traveled fast. A reporter from a local lifestyle blog, ironically there to review the newly opened restaurant, recognized Alexander and slipped out a small camera to snap a few shots from across the room. Suddenly, Alexander felt the full weight of the exposure he had always dreaded. He reached out to Mia's arm, trying to guide her to a more private alcove. She resisted, jerking free of his grip. "Don't touch me," she hissed, voice low but furious. The heartbreak in her eyes made him realize how deep his betrayal ran. Eva remained silent, unsure whether to defend herself or leave. Part of her wanted to say something like, "He never told me he was still with you," but that would be a lie she had known. Another part of her wanted to disappear altogether. This was the moment she realized that all the fancy dinners and lavish gifts could not shield her from the moral and emotional chaos of destroying someone's marriage. She could no longer deny the pain in Mia's eyes. James Salerno, sensing that the confrontation might escalate further, stepped in. "Mrs. Harrington, perhaps we should." But Mia's anger, which had been building for months, erupted. "You have the nerve to act like you're concerned for my dignity now, Alexander," she said, voice trembling. "After parading this woman around one of the most exclusive restaurants in town, did you think I would never find out? That my life is just a side note in your endless quest for more?" Alexander's composure cracked. He stood there unable to respond, because every defense sounded hollow, every apology insufficient. He dared to look at her face, the woman who had supported him from the start, and saw that same face crumpled by betrayal. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a camera flash. Some onlooker had snapped a photo. Panic rose inside him. His empire, his carefully curated image, everything could be tarnished in one fell swoop. But this was not a business negotiation. No bribe or well-chosen excuse would salvage the situation. He had to confront the fact that for the first time in his life, he was not in control. He felt a wave of regret so profound it nearly took his breath away. In the aftermath of that harrowing scene, Mia turned on her heel and stormed out, tears spilling down her cheeks. James followed, pausing briefly to glare at Alexander, an admonishing look that spoke volumes about moral integrity. Eva stood frozen. Alexander, his face pale, hurried after Mia, leaving Eva alone, amid silent onlookers and staff who were clearly uncomfortable. Pierre Dubois quietly apologized to nearby tables, assuring them that Mistral's garden strove to maintain a peaceful atmosphere and offered complimentary dessert to soothe nerves. By the time Alexander reached the hotel lobby, Mia had already stepped into an awaiting cab with James beside her. She refused to look at Alexander even as he banged on the window, begging her to talk. The taxi pulled away, merging into the city traffic, leaving him standing under the bright lights of the Redwood Hotel's entrance, feeling more alone than he had ever felt in his life. A few blocks away, Mia pressed a hand to her mouth, stifling sobs. She could hardly believe what had just happened. Part of her felt a surge of relief that she finally had proof. No more gaslighting, no more living in the shadows of suspicion. Yet the relief was buried under layers of heartbreak. James gently patted her shoulder, whispering words of comfort. He suggested she take time, consult a lawyer if necessary, and above all, prioritize her emotional well-being. Mia nodded numbly, her eyes staring unfocused at the passing city lights. She realized a chapter of her life was closing, but she had no idea what would follow. Meanwhile, Alexander returned to the restaurant to collect his coat and found Eva waiting near the entrance, her eyes downcast. She offered a half-hearted apology, something along the lines of, "I never wanted it to happen like this." But the words felt insubstantial. She, too, could see the writing on the wall. This scandal wouldn't just vanish. For Alexander, the immediate concern was not just the wounded pride, but the monstrous repercussions that would follow. The next morning, the tabloids exploded with rumors. A grainy photo of Alexander reaching out to Mia in the Redwood Hotel lobby found its way onto a gossip blog, which was then picked up by multiple outlets. The headlines ranged from billionaire Harrington's cheating scandal exposed to exclusive Alexander Harrington's public showdown with wife. Some publications dragged Eva's name into the spotlight, linking her modeling career to the scandal and speculating about hush payments or secret gifts. Alexander woke up to dozens of missed calls and frantic messages. His public relations team was in a tailspin. Shareholders in his company panicked as social media erupted in condemnation. Even though business and personal matters often remain separate, the negative publicity had the potential to affect investor confidence. Rival moguls would sense an opportunity to undermine him. Charities that had once clamored for his endorsement now hesitated, not wanting to be associated with scandal. He spent hours in a crisis meeting with his PR team, all of them analyzing the best angle to spin. Should they craft a statement claiming the couple had been separated for months, that the mistress was simply a friend? The team offered half-baked suggestions, each one more ludicrous than the last. Alexander realized there was no easy fix. This wasn't a social media misstep or a corporate miscalculation. It was a personal betrayal out in the open. Adding to the turmoil, Mia wouldn't return his calls. Her phone went straight to voicemail. He left heartfelt messages pleading for a chance to explain, but deep down, he knew no explanation could justify his deceit. A sense of foreboding settled over him. He had lost the trust of the one person who stood by him for years, and for what? A fleeting thrill that had crumbled his entire reality. Mia found sanctuary at her sister's house on the outskirts of the city. Isabella Carver, 2 years younger, was a fiercely protective sibling who had never trusted Alexander. Although Isabella maintained civility for Mia's sake, she had voiced concerns about Alexander's roving eye. Now that the truth was out, she welcomed Mia with open arms. The two sisters spent hours talking, crying, and flipping through old photographs. Mia confided that she felt both devastated and strangely liberated. No longer forced to pretend her marriage was intact, she could finally contemplate her future in an honest light. But the question of next steps loomed large. Would she file for divorce? Could she handle the public fallout? Isabella offered encouragement. "You have money of your own, Mia. You have the foundation and the scholarship program. You have your degrees and your talents. You don't need him." Her conviction gave Mia hope, but heartbreak is never a clean cut. Love doesn't dissipate the moment betrayal is confirmed. Amid their discussions, Mia's phone pinged repeatedly with voicemails and text messages from Alexander. She felt a swirl of anger and longing. She missed the man she had married, not the man who had orchestrated secret dates in fancy hotels. She played a few of the voicemails, hearing his apologies tumble out, raw and desperate. A pang of empathy hit her, but it was overshadowed by the memory of seeing him with Eva, the intimate smile they had shared, the way he had lied to her face time and again. That night, as Isabella prepared tea, Mia stared out of the window at the twinkling lights of passing cars. She thought back to her wedding day, the vows they made, the sparkle in Alexander's eyes, the unspoken promise that they would build a future of trust and companionship. Now, it all felt like a distant fable. While Alexander wrestled with damage control, Eva Monroe found herself at the center of a social media firestorm. Overnight, her Instagram account swelled with hateful comments. Detractors labeled her a homewrecker, telling her she didn't deserve her modeling career or the luxurious lifestyle she flaunted. Even her professional opportunities took a hit. One prominent fashion label quietly dropped her from an upcoming campaign, citing scheduling conflicts, but Eva knew the real reason. She had never anticipated this level of public scrutiny. Her illusions of living a secret, glamorous double life were shattered. Could she blame Alexander entirely? She was complicit. She accepted his gifts, his affection, and the lies he told about his marriage. At times, she even romanticized it, imagining their relationship as a star-crossed affair. But the harsh spotlight of reality now shone on her involvement, revealing the damage inflicted on Mia's life. Desperate to salvage her career, Eva reached out to a close friend, a PR consultant named Rebecca Green. Rebecca advised her to lay low and refrain from posting on social media. Any statement you make now will only fuel the tabloids, she warned. This scandal is too fresh. Eva spent her days cooped up in her penthouse, reading the vitriolic comments that flooded her phone. She felt regret, not just for being caught, but for the pain she caused. Despite her ambition and hunger for wealth, she was human enough to recognize the suffering etched on Mia's face that night. She wondered if she should apologize to Mia directly, but reasoned it might do more harm than good. Instead, she drowned in remorse, uncertain if she could ever fully recover from the tarnish on her name. A week passed, though it felt like a lifetime. Mia still refused to see Alexander in person. Her lawyer, Amanda Price, an accomplished divorce attorney, scheduled a meeting to explore the legal implications. They sat in a polished conference room, the afternoon sun casting stripes of light on the mahogany table. Amanda explained the complexities of high-asset divorces. You have marital assets that span multiple properties, investments, and business ventures. If you decide to file for divorce, the financial negotiations will be extensive, she said, studying Mia's reaction. But beyond the assets, you also have his foundation, which you co-chaired, and your own philanthropic initiatives. Mia's head spun with the legal jargon, pre-nuptial agreements, property divisions, settlement figures, and more. Amanda also mentioned the potential for spousal support and the intense media scrutiny that would likely follow a public divorce. This won't be easy, Amanda said kindly, but you have every right to walk away with what's fair. Although Mia felt tremendous sadness, she also felt an undercurrent of resolve. She deserved more than a life of unending suspicion and heartbreak. Yet the decision to formally end a marriage she once cherished weighed heavily. Soon after, she received a call from Alexander's father, Lucas Harrington, who had been a mentor figure to her in the early years of their marriage. "Mia," he said in a gentle tone, "I understand you're hurt. Alexander was wrong, no question about it. But consider all the history you two share. Consider therapy, perhaps. He's willing to do anything to earn your forgiveness." Mia listened, tears forming. She had loved Alexander once intensely. Part of her yearned to see him change, to restore what they had lost. Another part of her doubted he was capable of change. Cheating wasn't a one-time lapse, but a pattern of behavior. That night, she lay awake, toggling between memories of happier times and the cold reality of her husband's betrayal. Unable to bear the stalemate any longer, Alexander wrote Mia a heartfelt letter, handwritten, something he hadn't done in years. He poured out his remorse, detailing how he had lost himself in the pursuit of success and the thrill of conquest. He wrote about their early days, how much he admired her intelligence and passion, how he missed the warmth of their shared laughter. He admitted there was no excuse for what he did, and that he might never regain her trust. But he pleaded for just one chance. He had the letter delivered by a courier to Isabella's house, accompanied by a bouquet of lilies, Mia's favorite flower. When Mia opened the envelope and began reading, tears streamed down her face. The words touched a part of her that still loved him. She read each line twice, trying to decipher if his regret was genuine or just another manipulation. The sincerity felt real, at least on paper. Mia's heart churned with conflicting emotions. On one hand, she felt validated seeing Alexander lay bare his faults. On the other, the weight of his betrayal still pressed on her chest like a heavy stone. Could she trust him again? Could therapy or time heal such a deep wound? She set the letter aside, letting her tears dry. She prayed for clarity, remembering how their wedding vows had included the phrase, "for better or worse." This was certainly the worst, but did she have the strength or desire to try and salvage what remained of their bond? It took a few days, but Mia agreed to meet Alexander under one condition. She wanted a public setting where he couldn't spin illusions, and she wanted James Salerno to be present as a witness. Alexander reluctantly agreed, fearing a scene, but desperate for any chance to speak with her. They chose a quiet corner table at a downtown cafe, Violetta's Gardenia, a far cry from the upscale restaurants they once frequented. Mia arrived first, accompanied by James. She wore a simple blouse and slacks, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. When Alexander walked in, he looked thinner, as though he had hardly slept or eaten. The weight of his shame and regret was palpable. As they settled, Mia laid out an ultimatum. If Alexander genuinely wanted to reconcile, he had to cut ties with Eva, immediately no contact whatsoever, and agree to couples therapy. She demanded full transparency with his finances, phone, and travel schedules. Lastly, she insisted he make a public statement, acknowledging his wrongdoing not as a PR stunt, but as a genuine attempt to quell rumors and let the world know he was committed to repairing his marriage. Alexander listened, his eyes downcast. He nodded at each requirement, finally glancing up to meet Mia's gaze. "I'll do whatever it takes," he said, voice hoarse. "I don't want to lose you." Mia's heart softened slightly, but her guard remained. She had heard him make empty promises before. Was he sincere this time? Faced with the possibility of losing her forever, James remained silent but vigilant, scanning Alexander's face for signs of deception. They parted ways with no immediate resolution. Mia told him she would consider his willingness to fulfill each requirement over time, but made no guarantees. For Alexander, it was a bittersweet relief. At least he had a path forward, uncertain though it was. Eva Monroe received a short, businesslike text from Alexander. "We can't see each other again. I'm ending this. I'm sorry." She felt a pang, a mix of anger and heartbreak. Though she had anticipated this moment, what other outcome was possible after the public exposure, it still stung to be summarily dismissed. In a moment of desperation, Eva tried to call him, but he never picked up. She left a voicemail tearfully asking for some closure, to which there was no reply. The finality of it washed over her, leaving her with the bitter aftertaste of a relationship built on lies. She realized she had pinned some portion of her future on Alexander's wealth and influence, and now that had disappeared in a cloud of scandal. Her career continued to spiral. More fashion contracts slipped through her fingers. Some agencies labeled her too controversial, while others preferred not to be associated with someone embroiled in a public affair. The hush money or settlement she might have hoped for never materialized. Alexander's legal team likely warned him that any financial transaction now would only fuel the narrative of his wrongdoing. Depression set in, accompanied by self-loathing. Late one night, Eva found herself flipping through old family photographs, reminded of simpler times, before her ambition led her to destructive choices. She wondered if there was a path to redemption or if she would forever be branded as the woman who tried to steal another's husband. She toyed with the idea of returning to her hometown, perhaps reuniting with her parents to regroup. The city no longer felt welcoming. It felt like a stage where she had been booed off by an unforgiving audience. Alexander took the first tangible step toward atonement by issuing a personal statement, no glitzy PR spin, no sugarcoating. He acknowledged his deep errors in judgment and expressed remorse for the pain he caused his wife Mia. The statement, published on his official social media channels and circulated to media outlets, read more like a personal confession than a corporate memo. Some critics dismissed it as damage control, but many saw the raw sincerity behind it. He also began attending therapy sessions, both individually and with Mia. The sessions were grueling. At the first couples therapy session, Mia unleashed a torrent of pent-up resentment. She recounted every instance she felt neglected, every suspicious moment that Alexander had tried to dismiss. The therapist, a gentle yet firm woman named Dr. Cassandra Barrow, guided them through the emotional minefield, urging Alexander to confront the root of his behavior, the incessant desire for more, the intoxication of power. Outside the therapy room, Alexander struggled to keep his business afloat. Some deals fell through. A few influential partners grew wary of associating with him until the scandal died down. But in a twist of irony, the transparency he displayed began to earn back some respect among certain quarters. Business moguls who had once seen him as a cutthroat opportunist now recognized a man forced to reckon with his demons. For Mia, the therapy offered a space to express her grief and confusion in a structured environment. She gradually explored whether she could forgive or at least let go of the intense bitterness. Yet trust was another matter altogether. Rebuilding trust with someone who betrayed her so deeply felt like an impossible mountain to climb. Just when Alexander believed he could manage the fallout, a deeper layer of karma arrived. An investigative journalist, Raymond Cole, published a scathing exposé on the questionable business practices of Harrington Real Estate worldwide. Digging through public records, Cole found evidence suggesting Alexander leveraged insider information to acquire properties at unfair prices. While none of it was outright illegal at first glance, the morality of it was questionable. Once the story gained traction, regulatory bodies took notice. An inquiry was launched into Alexander's real estate deals. The possibility of legal penalties and massive fines loomed. Investors panicked, causing Harrington Real Estate Worldwide's stock to dip. Board members grew restless, with some hinting that Alexander might need to step down as CEO to protect the company's reputation. This new crisis underscored the truth that betrayal often spawns more betrayal. The unscrupulous choices Alexander had made in business mirrored the deceptive choices he made in his marriage. The walls of his empire seemed to tremble, and for the first time in his life, he considered the possibility of losing everything: his fortune, his status, and his wife. Mia watched from the sidelines, torn between lingering affection and the painful recognition that Alexander's downfall was largely self-inflicted. She saw how stress weighed on him, how the lines on his face deepened with each new development. He was reaping the whirlwind of his actions, paying a steep price. Yet she couldn't ignore the small voice inside her that still cared about him that whispered maybe this catastrophe would force him to grow into a better man. Amid looming legal challenges, public scorn, and a turbulent boardroom, Alexander persisted with therapy. He insisted on full openness, sharing daily updates of his schedule with Mia, handing over phone records, and inviting her to attend significant business meetings if she wished. His relentless efforts to demonstrate good faith were met with cautious acceptance. Mia had begun to see incremental changes. He listened more, apologized without deflecting, and tried to be present in moments that mattered. Eva Monroe, on the other hand, disappeared from the public eye. Rumor had it she moved back to her hometown, stepping away from modeling indefinitely. A few tabloids speculated about her next move, but the scandal's spotlight had shifted primarily to Alexander's potential business violations. For Eva, anonymity felt like a refuge now. James Salerno, still offering supportive counsel, advised Mia to keep her legal options open. Reconciliation is a personal decision, he said, but never close the door on protecting yourself. Mia took that to heart. She didn't withdraw the divorce papers, leaving them as a bargaining chip. If Alexander ever reverted to his old ways, she would finalize them without hesitation. Weeks turned into months. The firestorm of media attention gradually cooled, replaced by newer scandals. The business inquiry dragged on with no conclusive findings yet. Alexander's PR meltdown plateaued, leaving him with a battered but surviving reputation. The Harrington Children's Foundation faced scrutiny too, but Mia's role remained untainted. In fact, her steadfast dedication shone in contrast to Alexander's controversies, garnering her increased respect in philanthropic circles. The slow, painstaking process of rebuilding something approximating a marriage continued. On one unseasonably warm autumn afternoon, Alexander and Mia stood at the Harrington Mansion's sprawling garden, where they had once hosted fundraisers and lavish parties. Now, it felt more like neutral territory, a place to reacquaint themselves. Alexander spoke softly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet here. I know it's still hard for you to be around me." Mia took a breath, looking out over the rose bushes. Memories of happier days, their vow renewal ceremony, and even simple mornings sipping coffee on the veranda flooded her mind. "Part of me still loves you," she said finally, her voice tinged with sadness. "But trust doesn't snap back. I don't know if it ever will." Alexander nodded, eyes glistening. "I understand. I'm not asking for instant forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to keep earning it, day by day." They walked together in silence, shoulders nearly touching, but not quite. A gentle breeze lifted the scent of blooming flowers, and Mia felt a strange sense of bittersweet hope. She recognized that continuing with Alexander was a massive gamble, but at least now she was no longer blind to who he was, and more importantly, she was no longer blind to her own worth. A year passed. Alexander stepped down as the active CEO of Harrington Real Estate Worldwide, allowing a seasoned executive to take over daily operations. He remained on the board, focusing on rectifying past questionable dealings under the scrutiny of the regulatory bodies. The process was arduous and humiliating, but it forced him to reevaluate his moral compass. Mia stayed by his side through part of it, though she insisted on maintaining her independence. She declined to resume the title of corporate wife, focusing instead on her art scholarship program and expanding the Harrington Children's Foundation. With Alexander's empire under fire, donations dwindled, but Mia's earnest dedication attracted new philanthropists who admired her integrity amidst the scandal. Couples therapy became less frequent as time wore on. The question looming between them was simple, yet monumental. Would Mia formally withdraw the divorce papers and remain married? Or would she end the relationship once and for all, Doctor? Barrow, sensing the pivotal moment, asked them during a final session, Mia, do you believe Alexander is sincere in his efforts to be a better husband? And Alexander, do you accept that you may never fully regain the trust you once had, but still commit to this marriage, regardless? Mia hesitated, her gaze meeting Alexander's. She saw regret etched into his features, a humbler man than the one who had swept Eva Monroe off her feet in a rooftop restaurant. I believe he's sincere, she said quietly, but sincerity alone doesn't erase what happened. Still, I'm willing to see if we can build something new out of this mess. Alexander nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I don't deserve it, but I promise to keep proving myself worthy of another chance. On a crisp winter morning, Mia formally withdrew the divorce papers. She and Alexander held a small ceremony at the Harrington mansion, not a vow renewal, but a quiet acknowledgement of their decision to face life together again. Close friends and family attended, though it was nothing like the lavish affairs they once hosted. James Salerno and Isabella Carver were there, standing protectively beside Mia as she navigated her complicated choice. During the ceremony, Alexander read a short speech. He spoke of the mistakes he made, the suffering he caused, and the ongoing task of redemption he had set for himself. Mia stood there, tears brimming, reflecting on how drastically their lives had changed in the span of a year. They had lost so many illusions, but gained a grounding in reality that neither of them had before. Outside, paparazzi still clamored hungry for a fresh angle on the Harrington saga. But Mia had learned to tune them out. She realized that her self-worth did not hinge on public opinion or even the success of her marriage. She had found a strength within herself that would endure regardless of Alexander's actions. Still, she hoped the man she once fell in love with could truly evolve, leaving the cycle of infidelity and deceit behind. Alexander, for his part, remained acutely aware that a single misstep could shatter the fragile trust they had painstakingly rebuilt. In quiet moments, he felt a surge of gratitude toward Mia and an equally powerful wave of regret for how far he had fallen. The man who once walked with unearned confidence now approached each day with humility, determined not to squander this final chance. The story of Alexander Harrington, Maya Harrington, and Eva Monroe became a cautionary tale that circulated in social circles for years to come. Some looked upon Mia with admiration for her resilience and her willingness to give her husband a second chance. Others whispered behind her back, questioning if she was naive to trust him again. Alexander, for all his wealth and power, learned that even a billionaire's resources couldn't shield him from the fallout of personal betrayal. He had paid dearly in business and in reputation. As for Eva, she eventually returned to modeling in a smaller city, slowly rebuilding her portfolio with minor gigs. In time, she made a quiet apology to Mia through a letter, an attempt, however small, to acknowledge her role in the heartbreak. Mia never replied, finding it best to move forward without reopening old wounds. Still, she accepted the letter as a sign that some people, no matter how flawed, can feel remorse and search for ways to become better. Life did not revert to a fairy tale for Alexander and Mia. They still argued, still attended therapy on occasion, and still navigated the complexities of trust. But in those complexities, they found authenticity. No more illusions, no more hidden phone calls, no more double lives. Whether this new foundation would last a lifetime remained to be seen, but they were, for once, standing on the solid ground of truth. And there you have it. One lavish date, one fateful encounter, and one unthinkable betrayal that shattered a marriage on the brink. Alexander Harrington thought his fortune and influence could keep his secrets hidden forever, but life had other plans, mercilessly ripping away the mask he wore. Mia's heartbreak turned into strength as she demanded truth and accountability, refusing to be a silent victim any longer. Eva learned the hard way that stepping into someone else's marriage came with consequences far beyond the glitter of gifts and glamorous outings. If you found yourself captivated by this tangled web of scandal and redemption, remember that stories like this can happen in real life, though they're rarely told so openly. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel if you want more dramatic real-life tales that peel back the layers of secrets, lies, and the powerful force of karma. Join our community and never miss a story again.